The research vessel Artemis drifted silently through the Carina Nebula's outer reaches, its sensors probing the cosmic dust for signs of exotic particles. Dr. Elena Santos stood at the main observation window, watching the swirls of purple and blue dance against the void. After 6 months of deep space research, they were about to head home, until the quantum detector started screaming. Multiple ships dropping out of FTL. Lieutenant Sarah Chen's voice cut through the peaceful ambience of the bridge. Energy signatures unlike anything in our database. The main display lit up with dozens of contacts. Sleek, crystalline vessels emerged from hyperspace, their hulls gleaming with internal energy. They were being pursued by darker shapes. Predatory vessels that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. "Those ships are taking heavy fire," Elena observed, her scientific curiosity warring with concern. "The energy readings are off the charts." Captain Michael Rivera studied the tactical display, his weathered face illuminated by the holographic projections. "Looks like we've stumbled into someone else's war. Helm, prepare tow." "New contact," Sarah interrupted. "One of the crystalline ships is on an intercept course." They're hailing us." The bridge crew exchanged glances. First contact was supposed to happen through proper diplomatic channels, not in the middle of a battle. Rivera straightened his uniform. "Put them through." The main screen flickered to life, revealing a being that seemed composed entirely of translucent crystals arranged in a vaguely humanoid shape. Its face pulsed with internal light as it spoke, its words automatically translated by the ship's eye. "Unidentified vessel. This is High Commander Zix of the Crystalline Concordat. You have entered an active combat zone. For your own safety, retreat immediately. Your primitive vessel cannot survive this conflict." Rivera's eyebrows rose. "This primitive vessel has a front row seat to your trouble, Commander. We're picking up massive shield failures in your fleet. Maybe we can help." The crystalline being's light patterns shifted in what might have been amusement or disdain. "Your vessel appears to utilize physical matter for hull construction. You still rely on chemical propulsion. What possible assistance could you offer against weapons that phase through matter itself?" As if to emphasize the point, one of the Concordat ships suddenly burst apart, its crystalline structure shattering as dark energy coursed through it. The enemy vessels, Rivera's tactical display labeled them as Void Hunters, pressed their advantage, their weapons seemingly ignoring the advanced shields of their targets. "Chief Engineer Patel," Rivera called out, "what are we looking at?" Arun Patel's fingers danced across his console. "Their ships are essentially living crystals, Captain, highly advanced, but they're all running on the same fundamental principles. Those attack ships are using phase-matched energy weapons. Once they find the resonance frequency, they can shatter the entire fleet." Elena finished, her scientist's mind racing. "It's like an opera singer breaking a wine glass." Rivera nodded slowly, a plan forming. "And what happens when you throw something completely different into the mix? Something that doesn't play by their rules?" He turned to the screen. "Commander Zix, you're fighting a force that's optimized to counter your technology. But we're not using your technology, are we?" The crystalline commander's response was cut off by another explosion. 3 Void Hunter ships had broken through the defensive line and were bearing down on what appeared to be a civilian transport. "Those are our younglings." Zix's composed demeanor cracked. "Our future generation. Please, you must retreat. Do not witness our failure." Rivera's jaw set. "Lieutenant Chen, load the kinetic broadside batteries. All tubes. Dr. Santos, I need your quantum detector reconfigured as a targeting array. Mr. Patel, divert power from the research arrays to the point defense grid." "Sir." Chen's hands hovered over the weapons console. "We're a research vessel." "A research vessel with 20 Mark VI mass drivers that we use for launching probes," Rivera reminded her, "and about 300 probes that are basically sophisticated missiles waiting for a target." Understanding dawned across the bridge. The Artemis might be classified as a research vessel, but like all human ships, She was built with the lessons of Earth's violent history in mind. Every scientific instrument could be repurposed for defense. Every probe could become a weapon. It wasn't elegant, but humanity had learned long ago that survival rarely was. Helm, plot an intercept course for that transport. Commander Zix, I suggest you watch closely. You might learn something about the advantages of being primitive. The Artemis surged forward, her engines burning bright against the nebulous cosmic gases. The Void Hunters, so focused on their crystalline prey, didn't even register the human vessel as a threat until the first salvo of kinetic rounds slammed into their shields. The effect was spectacular. The enemy's phase-matched defenses, designed to counter energy weapons, might as well have been tissue paper against good old-fashioned tungsten slugs accelerated to a significant fraction of light speed. Two of the attacking ships spun out of formation, their sophisticated systems struggling to compensate for damage they weren't designed to handle. Status of the civilian transport, Rivera demanded. Still intact, but their propulsion is failing, Chen reported. The third Void Hunter is moving to finish them off. Not today, Rivera muttered. Dr. Santos, do you have that targeting solution? Alina's hands flew across her console, converting her precious research instrument into an impromptu fire control system. Ready, Captain. But we'll only get one shot before they adapt. Then let's make it count. All probe tubes, fire on my mark. The Artemis shuddered as she released her entire complement of research probes, each one's scientific payload now serving as an improvised warhead. The swarm of makeshift missiles overwhelmed the remaining Void Hunter's defenses through sheer volume, forcing it to break off its attack on the transport. Commander Zix, Rivera called out, I suggest you get that transport to safety while we have their attention. And maybe next time, don't be so quick to dismiss something just because it's different from what you're used to. The crystalline commander's response was lost in the chaos of battle, but the way the Concordat ships quickly moved to rescue their civilian vessel spoke volumes. The Artemis had done more than save lives. She had shattered preconceptions about what primitive really meant. As the enemy ships regrouped for another attack, Rivera allowed himself a small smile. The real fight was just beginning, and humanity's primitive solutions were about to teach the galaxy some very important lessons about the dangers of underestimating less advanced civilizations. All hands, he announced, prepare for combat maneuvers. Let's show our new friends why humans still believe in backup plans and redundant systems. The stars themselves seemed to hold their breath as the research vessel turned to face its next challenge, ready to prove that sometimes the old ways were the best ways, especially when nobody expects them. The crystalline Concordat's central engineering hub sparkled like a cathedral built from living light. Chief Engineer Arun Patel stood amid a forest of floating holographic displays, trying not to show his amazement at the alien facility's beauty, or his concern at its vulnerability. Your entire power grid runs through these crystal matrices, he asked, studying the intricate patterns that pulsed with energy. No physical backup systems at all. Grand Architect Valzin, a towering crystalline figure whose form rippled with iridescent colors, emanated what Patel had learned to recognize as pride. Our technology has evolved beyond the need for crude material connections. Each crystal node communicates with its neighbors through quantum entanglement. It is perfectly efficient. Perfectly predictable, you mean, Patel muttered, thinking of the Void Hunter's devastating attacks. 3 days had passed since the Artemis's intervention in the battle, and the Concordat had reluctantly invited the human crew to help analyze their defenses. What Patel saw worried him deeply. Alina Santos appeared at his side, her handheld scanner humming as she took readings. The crystalline architecture is remarkable, she said, but it's like they've painted themselves into a technological corner. Every system operates on the same fundamental principles. A corner the Void Hunters have figured out how to exploit, Patel agreed. He turned to Valzin. With respect, Grand Architect, your advancement has become a weakness. You've optimized your technology to the point where you have no fallback options. The alien engineer's form flickered with what might have been irritation. Our systems are the pinnacle of efficiency. Perhaps your primitive perspectives simply cannot grasp. An alarm cut through the hub, its crystalline tones resonating through the structure. Status displays flashed urgent warnings as power fluctuations rippled through the grid. Void Hunter probe detected in Sector 7. The announcement echoed through quantum channels. Shield grid experiencing harmonic disruption. Patel's eyes widened as he watched the cascade of failures begin. They're using your own power transmission network against you. The probe's sending harmonic pulses through your quantum links. Valzin's form pulsed with panic. Impossible. Our frequencies are encrypted, protected by the same technology they've been studying and exploiting. Patel interrupted. He grabbed his toolkit, an assortment of physical tools that had drawn curious stares from the Concordat engineers. Dr. Santos, we need to isolate that sector before the disruption spreads. Elena was already moving, her scanner reconfigured to trace the power fluctuations. The probe's signal is propagating through the quantum network. At this rate, it'll reach the central core in minutes. Valzin's crystalline appendages waved in distress. The isolation protocols aren't responding. The probe's signal is blocking our command frequencies. Patel pulled a laser cutter from his kit. Then we do this the old-fashioned way. Where's the physical location of the Sector 7 power conduit? Physical location. Valzin seemed confused by the concept. The power flows through quantum states, not physical. The crystals, damn it. Patel snapped. The actual crystals that house your quantum network. They have to be somewhere. Understanding flickered through Valzin's form. Sub-level 3, junction point alpha. But you can't mean Toe. Patel was already running. Elena close behind. They sprinted through crystalline corridors, following Valzin's reluctant directions. Other Concordat engineers watched in confusion as the humans rushed past with their primitive tools. They found the junction point, a massive crystal cluster that pulsed with corrupted energy. The Void Hunter probe's signal had turned the beautiful light show into a threatening storm of discord. Cover your eyes, Patel warned, activating his laser cutter. The tool, designed for hull repairs in space, sliced through the crystal matrix with brutal efficiency. Concordat engineers who had followed them cried out in horror as he physically severed their precious network. The effect was immediate. The harmonic disruption, cut off from its transmission path, dissipated harmlessly. Emergency systems, no longer receiving the corrupted signal, began to stabilize. Barbaric. One of the Concordat engineers exclaimed. You've destroyed a priceless quantum junction. I've saved your entire network, Patel corrected, wiping sweat from his brow. Sometimes the crude solution is the right solution. Elena's scanner beeped as she studied the severed crystal. The probe's signal is still active in the isolated section, but it can't spread. We can study it now, figure out exactly how they're hijacking your quantum frequencies. Valzin drifted forward, their crystalline form dimmed with what might have been humility. You deliberately damaged our system to save it. This goes against everything we believe about technological progress. Progress isn't always about making things more advanced, Patel said, packing up his tools. Sometimes it's about remembering why the old ways worked. Your quantum network is beautiful and efficient, but you need redundancies, backups, physical overrides that can't be hacked or corrupted. He gestured at the sealed-off section. The Void Hunters understand your technology because it's all built on the same principles, but they weren't prepared for a laser cutter and someone willing to use it. That's humanity's real advantage. We never forgot how to do things the hard way. Elena nodded, already documenting the probe's signal pattern. We can help you retrofit physical backups into your systems. They won't be as elegant as quantum transmission, but they'll give you options when the elegant solution fails. Valzin's form brightened slightly. Perhaps there is wisdom in maintaining connections to simpler technologies. Will you teach us? Patel smiled, patting his toolkit. That's why we're here. Let's start with the basics. Sometimes the most powerful tool is just knowing when to pull the plug. As they began planning the upgrades, Patil couldn't help but wonder what other primitive solutions might help the Concordat survive. The Void Hunters had exploited the aliens' technological uniformity. Maybe it was time to introduce some human-style chaos into their perfect systems. The real question was whether the Concordat could adapt to such a fundamental change in their engineering philosophy, and whether they could do it before the Void Hunters launched their next attack. The command center of the crystalline Concordat's defense station hummed with tension as Captain Rivera studied the tactical display. Dozens of red markers signaled approaching Void Hunter vessels, their formation unlike anything seen in previous encounters. "They're adapting," Lieutenant Chen observed, her fingers dancing across the hybrid control interface they'd installed. "Look at those energy signatures. They've modified their weapons to fire in rotating frequencies." "Of course they have," Rivera muttered. The past week of retrofitting the Concordat's defenses with human-inspired backup systems had bought them time. But the Void Hunters weren't staying still. Status of the new defensive grid. High Commander Zix's crystalline form pulsed with nervous energy. "The physical circuit breakers your engineer designed are in place, but they reduce our shield efficiency by 12%. Some of my commanders are questioning the wisdom of these modifications." Elena Santos looked up from her workstation, where she'd been analyzing enemy scan data. "Better to have shields at 88% that can't be completely disabled than ones at 100% that can be shattered with the right frequency." The tactical display suddenly flared with warning indicators. The Void Hunter fleet had launched their first wave, not energy weapons this time, but thousands of tiny crystalline probes. "They're using our own technology against us," Zix's voice carried an edge of despair. "Those probes are designed to synchronize with our crystal matrices and—" "Not anymore," Chief Patil interrupted, emerging from a maintenance tunnel. His normally pristine uniform was stained with coolant and crystal dust. "Remember those primitive signal jammers we installed? Time to see if they work. Dr. Santos, if you would." Elena activated the new defense system. Across the station, hundreds of electromagnetic pulse generators, hastily constructed from modified research equipment, sprang to life. The approaching cloud of crystal probes stuttered, their perfect formation dissolving as the crude but effective EMPs disrupted their sophisticated quantum guidance systems. "Barbaric," one of the Concordat officers whispered, but there was a note of admiration in their tone. "They're launching their main attack," Chen called out. "Multiple weapon signatures. They are trying everything at once, hoping to overwhelm our new defenses." Rivera smiled grimly. "Then let's show them our next surprise. Commander Zix, is your crew ready to try our hybrid defense strategy?" The crystalline commander's form brightened with determination. "We've drilled the new protocols. Though I still find it difficult to believe such a chaotic approach could be effective." "Chaos is humanity's specialty," Rivera said. "Execute defense pattern theta." What followed would be studied in military academies, both human and Concordat, for generations to come. As the Void Hunters unleashed their assault, expecting to find the usual crystalline shields and quantum defenses, they instead encountered a constantly shifting maze of countermeasures. Traditional crystal shields would flicker and fail, only to be replaced by crude but effective physical barriers. Quantum communication networks would go dark, switching to hardwired backup systems before the enemy could exploit them. Every time the Void Hunters thought they'd found a weakness to exploit, the defense would shift to something completely different. "They're falling out of formation," Chen reported, excitement creeping into her voice. "Their targeting algorithms can't predict our defense patterns." "Because we're not using patterns," Patil said proudly. "Each section of the defense grid is responding independently, using whatever works best at the moment. No central system to hack, no single weakness to exploit." Elena's console beeped urgently. "They're trying to adapt, reading massive power fluctuations in their lid chips. They're diverting everything to their weapons, trying to overwhelm us with brute force." "Perfect," Rivera said quietly. "They're desperate. Commander Zix, I believe that's your cue. The crystalline commander gave the equivalent of a nod. All ships, execute attack pattern Sigma. The Concordat fleet, which had been hanging back during the initial exchange, suddenly surged forward. But these weren't the same ships that had been so easily countered before. Each vessel now sported what looked like crude metal attachments, human-designed weapons, and systems grafted onto their crystal hulls. The Void Hunters, their weapons fully committed to breaking through the station's defenses, found themselves caught in a devastating crossfire. Physical projectiles from human-designed mass drivers shattered their sophisticated shields. Electromagnetic pulses from jury-rigged research equipment disrupted their targeting systems. And through gaps in their formation, precisely calculated by Alina's hybrid targeting algorithms, the Concordat's energy weapons found their marks. Enemy fleet is in full retreat, Chen announced, unable to keep the satisfaction from her voice. 40% of their ships destroyed or disabled. No casualties on our side. The command center erupted in a chorus of crystalline chimes, the Concordat equivalent of cheering. Zix turned to Rivera, their form glowing with newfound respect. Captain, I owe you and your crew an apology. We thought your methods primitive, your technology obsolete. We were wrong. The strength of humanity lies not in the sophistication of your tools, but in your ability to use everything at your disposal. Rivera shook his head. The strength lies in the combination, Commander. Your advanced technology paired with our redundant systems. Your precision merged with our adaptability. Apart, we were both vulnerable. Together. He gestured at the tactical display, where the remnants of the Void Hunter fleet were disappearing into FTL. Together, Zix finished, we are something they cannot predict or counter. A new paradigm. But even as the celebration continued, Alina caught Rivera's eye and gestured at her readings. The Void Hunters' retreat had been too organized, too purposeful. They weren't beaten. They were regrouping, analyzing, adapting. The next battle would be even harder, but now, at least, they had a fighting chance. Humanity's primitive solutions had bought them time and shown the way forward. The question was, would it be enough for what was coming? The Void Hunter attack came 3 days later, and nothing was the same. Multiple contacts. Chen's voice carried across the command center as the enemy fleet dropped out of FTL. But these readings, this can't be right. Alina rushed to verify the sensor data, her face paling. They've modified their ships. They're using hybrid technology, crystal matrices reinforced with physical armor. They've learned from us. Rivera watched the tactical display with grim recognition. The Void Hunter vessels now bristled with crude but effective physical weapons alongside their phase shift technology. They had studied their defeat and adapted, just as humanity had done countless times throughout its history. They're not just copying us, Patil observed from his engineering station. They're improving on the concept. Those armor plates are crystalline metallic composites, more resilient than either material alone. Commander Zix's form flickered with concern. Our previous tactics won't work, Rivera finished. They've evolved. So must we. He turned to his crew. Dr. Santos, what do your quantum analyzers tell us about their new configuration? Alina's fingers flew across her console. The crystal metal hybrid creates interference patterns in their energy distribution. Their ships are stronger, but... She paused, eyes widening. But less stable. The interaction between materials generates harmonic frequencies we might be able to exploit. If we can get close enough, Chen added. Those physical weapons they've added will tear us apart at range. Rivera nodded slowly, a dangerous glint in his eye. Then we changed the rules again. Chief Patel, remember that crazy idea you mentioned last week? The one about using the Concordat's quantum matrices to enhance our primitive systems. Patel's face lit up with understanding. The crystal core accelerators. Sir, those are just theoretical. We haven't even tested. No time like the present. Rivera turned to Zix. Commander, we need every scrap of crystal matrix your engineers can spare, and we need it within the hour. What followed was a blur of desperate innovation. Human engineering teams worked alongside Concordat crystal shapers, integrating alien quantum technology into the Artemis's conventional weapons. The process was dangerous, unstable, and completely unprecedented. "This goes against every safety protocol in existence," Patel muttered as he calibrated a crystal-enhanced mass driver. "We're essentially creating quantum-accelerated projectiles. The energy requirements alone will be managed by the Concordat's power grid." Elena finished, making final adjustments to her calculations. Their crystals channel energy more efficiently than any human technology. Combined with our targeting systems, we're revolutionizing warfare in the middle of a battle, Chen observed, testing the new hybrid weapons controls. "Either we're brilliant or insane." "Probably both," Rivera replied. "Status: first wave of modifications complete," Patel reported. "We've enhanced our primary weapons with crystal cores. The Concordat fleet is receiving similar upgrades. But sir, these systems are incredibly unstable. One wrong move and..." The tactical alert cut him off. The Void Hunters had launched their attack, their new hybrid ships moving with deadly purpose. "All ships, battle formation," Rivera ordered. "Let's show them they're not the only ones who can adapt." The battle that followed would rewrite military doctrine for both species. The Void Hunters opened fire with their newly acquired physical weapons, expecting to overwhelm the defenders before they could get within energy weapon range. Instead, they met a response unlike anything they'd prepared for. The Artemis crystal-enhanced mass drivers fired projectiles accelerated by quantum fields, achieving velocities that should have been impossible. Each shot carried a payload of crystalline matrices programmed to resonate with the enemy's hybrid hulls. "Direct hit on their flagship," Chen called out. "Their armor it's dissolving. The quantum resonance is breaking down the crystal metal bonds." But the Void Hunters were far from finished. Their ships split into smaller formations, attacking from multiple vectors. Some began emitting interference fields that disrupted the quantum-enhanced weapons. "They're adapting to our adaptations," Elena observed, frantically adjusting targeting solutions. "Every minute this battle continues, they're learning and changing their tactics." "Good," Rivera said with fierce pride. "Because so are we." "Chief Patel, initiate Protocol Omega." Patel's hands flew across his console, activating the riskiest modification they'd made. The Artemis's entire hull began to resonate with quantum energy, crystal nodes embedded throughout its structure pulsing with power. "Sir," Chen reported with awe, "the Concordat fleet, they're synchronizing with us. Their crystal matrices are linking with our quantum field." The combined human-alien fleet began to move as one, their ships connected by a web of quantum resonance. Each vessel's strengths compensated for another's weaknesses. When the Void Hunters adapted to one ship's attacks, they found themselves vulnerable to another's. "This is impossible," one of the Concordat officers whispered. "The level of coordination required." "Impossible is what humans do best," Rivera replied, watching as the battle turned in their favor, "especially when we have allies willing to break the rules with us." The Void Hunters fought with desperate intensity, but they couldn't match the sheer creativity of the combined fleet. Every time they developed a counter-to-one tactic, their opponents had already moved on to something new. Finally, after what seemed like hours, the enemy fleet retreated, leaving behind a graveyard of shattered hybrid ships. But victory had come at a cost. The Artemis crystal-enhanced systems were burning out, their unstable modifications pushed beyond their limits. The Concordat fleet showed similar signs of strain, their pure crystal structures contaminated by the quantum resonance experiments. "We won," Chen said quietly, "but we can't fight another battle like this. The modifications won't hold." "No," Rivera agreed, "but we've proved something important." He turned to Zix, whose crystalline form seemed somehow altered by the experience. "Neither of our species' approaches was perfect, but together we've created something entirely new." "A third path," Zix agreed. neither purely advanced nor purely primitive, but a true evolution of both. Alina's console chimed with a priority alert. Captain, long-range sensors are detecting massive energy signatures. The Void Hunters, they're coming back, and they're bringing everything they have. Rivera nodded grimly. They had won this battle through desperate innovation, but the war was far from over. The next encounter would demand even more from both species. Then we'd better get to work, he said. We've got more rules to break. The massive Void Hunter armada filled the tactical display like a storm of dark stars. 300 ships strong, their largest force yet, each vessel a perfect fusion of crystal technology and physical engineering. Their arrival had shattered the celebration of the previous victory, replacing it with grim determination. They've perfected the hybrid designs, Elena reported, studying the sensor data. These aren't rushed modifications anymore. They've fully integrated both technological approaches. Rivera stood at the command center's main viewport, watching as the combined human Concordat fleet took up defensive positions around the station. The Artemis, its hull still scarred from the previous battle, held position at the center of the formation. 20 Concordat vessels surrounded it, their crystal structures now permanently altered by human modifications. Status of the new defensive systems? Rivera asked, not taking his eyes off the approaching enemy fleet. The quantum mechanical interfaces are stable, Paddle reported from engineering. We've solved the resonance problems from the last battle. But sir, even with these improvements, we're outnumbered 15-1. Commander Zix's crystalline form pulsed with determination. Numbers are not everything. Chief Engineer, you humans have taught us that quite thoroughly. Speaking of teaching, Elena interrupted. Their fleet formation. It's perfect. Too perfect. They're arranging themselves in a crystalline lattice structure. Rivera turned from the viewport, sudden understanding dawning. They're not just copying our technology. They're trying to prove they can do it better, more efficiently, more perfectly. Their weakness, Chen said suddenly. They're still thinking like crystals, even with their new adaptations. Everything has to be ordered, structured, optimal. While we, Rivera smiled grimly, are about to get very, very messy. All ships, execute protocol chaos. The combined fleet burst into action, but not in any formation the Void Hunters could have predicted. Each ship began moving independently, following random patterns generated by Elena's quantum uncertainty algorithms. The Artemis led the charge, its crystal-enhanced weapons firing in deliberately irregular patterns. The Void Hunter fleet's perfect lattice structure tried to adapt, to maintain its organizational efficiency while responding to the chaos. But every time they adjusted their formation to counter one threat, 3 more appeared from unexpected vectors. They can't predict us, Chen reported with fierce satisfaction. Their targeting systems are designed to find patterns, but we're not giving them any. The battle quickly devolved into exactly the kind of fight humans had specialized in for millennia. Chaotic, unpredictable, and utterly resistant to logical analysis. The Concordat ships, guided by human tactical advisors, broke every rule of proper space combat. They used debris as cover, executed random manual course corrections, and fired their weapons in deliberately inefficient ways. But the Void Hunters were far from defeated. Their superior numbers began to tell, their perfectly coordinated attacks gradually wearing down the defenders' shields. Hull breaches on decks 3-5. Paddle reported as the Artemis shuddered under another hit. The crystal matrices are starting to fracture. Status of the quantum core, Rivera demanded. Stable, but we can't take much more of this. Whatever we're going to do, we need to do it now. Rivera nodded to Elena. Dr. Santos, initiate final protocol. Elena's hands flew across her console, activating the program they'd prepared as their last resort. Throughout the human Concordat fleet, crystal matrices began to pulse with new energy patterns, patterns deliberately designed to be as chaotic and unpredictable as possible. Quantum resonance field activated, she reported. all ships broadcasting on random frequencies. The effect was immediate and devastating. The Void Hunters' perfect lattice formation began to distort as their hybrid ships tried to process the chaos of quantum signals washing over them. Their crystal components, seeking harmony and order, couldn't handle the deliberate discord being transmitted. "Their fleet formation is breaking down," Chen called out. "Their ships are interfering with each other." "Now," Rivera ordered, "all ships concentrate fire on their command nodes." The combined fleet struck as one, but not with the precision the Void Hunters expected. Instead, each ship fired independently, creating a storm of different attacks from different angles with different weapons. Crystal-enhanced mass drivers launched quantum-destabilized projectiles. Modified energy weapons fired in deliberately erratic patterns. Even the debris from earlier hits became weapons, their trajectories calculated to cause maximum chaos. The Void Hunters' perfectly organized fleet tried to respond with textbook precision, but there was no textbook for this kind of battle. Their attempts to maintain efficiency and order became their undoing as ships collided trying to maintain formation. Weapons interfered with each other's targeting solutions, and command signals became hopelessly tangled. "Their flagship's quantum core is destabilizing," Elena reported. "The chaos field is causing a cascade failure in their crystal matrices." The massive Void Hunter command ship's perfect crystalline structure began to fragment, its hybrid modifications unable to contain the quantum discord. The effect spread through their fleet like a virus, each ship's desire for perfect synchronization becoming a liability as the disorder propagated. "They're retreating," Chen announced as the enemy fleet began to break apart. Multiple ships losing power, their crystal cores are shutting down to prevent total collapse. The command center erupted in a mixture of human cheers and crystalline chimes as the Void Hunter armada fled in disarray, their perfect formation shattered, their hybrid technology turned against them by the very chaos they had sought to eliminate. Commander Zix turned to Rivera, their crystalline form glowing with newfound understanding. "You didn't just teach us to adapt our technology, Captain. You taught us to embrace imperfection itself as a strength." Rivera nodded, watching the tactical display as the last enemy ships disappeared. "Perfect systems are predictable systems, Commander. The most powerful force in the universe isn't order or chaos. It's the ability to use both when needed. A lesson we won't forget," Six agreed. "The Concordat will never again dismiss a technology or approach simply because it seems primitive. Diversity, in all its forms, is strength." As the combined fleet regrouped and damage reports began coming in, Rivera looked around at his crew, humans and crystalline beings working side by side, their differences becoming advantages rather than obstacles. "Primitive is just another word for tested by time," he said quietly. "And sometimes the oldest solutions are the best ones, especially when combined with new ideas. That's humanity's real gift to the galaxy, not our technology, but our willingness to try anything, combine everything, and never stop adapting." The Artemis crystal-enhanced hull gleamed in the starlight, its scars and modifications a testament to the power of combining different approaches. It wasn't pretty, wasn't perfect, wasn't even particularly efficient, but it had helped change the course of a war and the future of two civilizations. Sometimes that was all the elegance you needed.